Welcome back to the Detroit Tigers franchise. I am your host, longtime listener. Drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and comment below. As in this episode, we've got a bunch of off-season action for you. Not the most exciting stuff, but a lot of moves to try and keep this team competitive. So we'll be doing some wheeling and dealing in terms of contract negotiations, looking at free agents, letting guys walk, and trying to kind of decide who we see as our team of the future. So starting things off, it's Michael Brantley. This guy had a phenomenal year for us last year. He's 34, but he hasn't really started to kind of, fall off the map in terms of his skills. So this is a guy that I don't know that will start against lefties this year, but if he plays against righties, you're talking a year where he's probably going to hit like 15 to 20 home runs, still hopefully hit up around 300, and plays pretty good defense. So, worst case scenario, we give him a 1 year deal, it doesn't work out, and then we just let him go next year. So I think if we give him a 1 year offer at $8.5 million, he's coming back. I'm sure he's going to take that. So, and that should keep him happy for one season. Hopefully, we get another good year out of him. Arodys Vizcaino, remember we signed him in the offseason before the 2020 campaign, and he has pitched very well for us. You see his numbers for the last two seasons. He's been outstanding. He's 31. He's a C potential, but he hasn't really started to, get worse, and he probably won't for another year or two at least. So he's going to be, a mid to low 80s overall rated guy for the next couple seasons, and we can absolutely use that in our bullpen. So we made him an offer for a 2 year deal. Marwin Gonzalez is interesting because he's 33. He had a great season last year, probably his best overall season at the plate, but I don't think that's going to continue. He's got decent plate skills, and his ratings from a contact and power perspective are respectable, but he's not going to hit 25 homers and 95 RBIs again. I mean, that was sort of an anomaly for a guy at this age, and mostly because he got a ton of playing time for us. He still plays pretty good defense, though, and he can play a lot of different positions, so he brings some value. I just don't think we're going to need him for a couple more years. We're going to give him an offer of 1 year, $5 million, and I'm sure he'll accept that and be back in a Tigers uniform next season. Jason Castro, another interesting decision to make here because we have Davey Grullon and Jake Rogers. Now, Castro hit the ball pretty well for us last year. He's never going to be a guy that's going to hit 290, and he hit, I think, like 240, 243. But he hit 17 home runs, which is the second best total of his career. He also drove in 61, which is a career high. But again, he's 34, C potential. It's not going to be long before those ratings and his skills just kind of really start to nosedive. And I want to make room for Grullon and Rogers. So this is a guy that I'm going to make him an offer, but it's not going to be a real good one because I don't care if he walks. He's going to start the year at AAA, and he's there as an option in case one of those other two get hurt, that we could call him up and he's back into a platoon role at the major league level. So we'll see what happens there. Now, Cameron Maybin, he's 34, and his ratings are starting to kind of to drop off a little bit. He had a pretty good year for us last year, but I just don't have room for him on this roster. We've got so many young outfielders, and with Brantley hopefully coming back, we're just not going to have a role for Maybin. Watson was really bad last year, and Alex Wilson's 34, sitting at AAA all of last season. He pitched well for us in 2020, but I just don't have a huge use for a 34-year-old C potential average relief pitcher. So we're going to let those two test free agency. Same for Cameron Maybin. There's a chance we might look at them as options for 1 year contracts as just depth, but highly unlikely that we'll see those guys back in the organization next year. Now, a quick look at, just again what we talked about with depth in the outfield. We have a ton of guys that are major league capable ball players. Brantley's the only one that's going to more than likely excel at an above average level because of his just power again and contact skills against righties, but everyone else is I could absolutely justify having them on the major league roster on opening day and hopefully get pretty good production from them. So what we want to look at, though, we've got 92 guys on the roster, so that's a challenge. We got to make some cuts to free up some space for some free agents, but also we have 37 on the 40-man roster, so now we kind of got to decide who we want to add. The first one we're going to add is Richard Kaiser. But we really need to kind of be careful with who else we're going to add because we got a ton of guys that are like 77 to 70 overall in terms of their ratings. And it's just one of those where if you bring them on the 40-man roster, now you need to decide like what is the realistic chance that they're actually going to be on the major league roster anytime soon. So what we're also going to try and do is pull some guys off the 40-man roster, starting with Jeimer Candelario. He's got no chance of seeing playing time at the major league level for us anymore. Gerson Moreno, another one that I just don't see us having a role for at the major league level. That's going to free up room for our rookie draft pick from last year, Freddie Avalos at second base, and then William Blake as another option at starting pitcher, a lefty, which I could use some help with. There's Carvajal and Choi, our two closers at the minor league level. We're going to add them and see what we can get from them. And then we're going to go back and release, it was Scott Alexander. He can go. He's 32 years old, so he's not, like way past his prime, but he was not very good for us last year. We're going to let him walk, and that'll leave us with Tim Meza and Dominic Billingsley as our left-handed relief pitcher options at the major league level, which I am totally fine with. Gregory Soto still sitting there as a depth option if we needed to call somebody up. He was on the roster last year or 2 years ago, so he's there as an emergency plan. So we got to re-sign some of these younger guys. We got a lot of renewable contracts, but my strategy with the younger players is to sign them to extended contracts. Usually it's 2 years because they won't sign anything longer than that. But it gives them a boost in morale because they're getting paid what they feel like they are worth, and that helps. And it's just one of those things where I don't like to have to deal with it every year, just waiting till after February 15th and hitting that renew option. So anyway, we're going to start with Sheldon Neuse. He had a phenomenal year for us last year. It's going to be interesting to see what we do with him in this year's lineup because he realistically overachieved. He has subpar plate discipline and vision ratings, so I don't think he's going to continue to put up those kind of numbers, but we're going to give him a 3-year offer and see if it sticks. Bert Kohler, he's the future at first base for us, so we want to keep him happy. He's looking for $1.6 million a year. We're actually going to list him as a star role because he's probably going to bat fourth or thereabouts in the lineup, but we're going to boost him up to $2 million a year, so a 2-year offer worth $4 million, and I'm pretty sure he will accept that. Then David Grion, the catcher that we traded for, he's 25. He's looking for $1.2 million a year and an everyday role, but he's probably going to platoon with Jake Rogers. So he's not going to take a 3-year deal, as is pretty normal with these guys when you only have a couple years of team control. But we're going to list him as platoon at 2 years, worth $1 million a year. I think this is going to be enough to make him happy. So we'll see what happens there. Then Les Dalevsky, he's still got that minor league contract, so they won't let you sign him to anything other than a 1-year deal. They won't let you list a role, but we are going to boost him up to $500K because he is almost certainly going to be on our opening day roster unless he is just absolutely pathetic during spring training and somebody else shines. Casey Mize, we definitely want to try and get him locked up as long as we can. He's going to be in the rotation, and he's going to be happy with a 3-year, $4.5 million deal, but I think what we actually want to do is go 2 years at $3 million, because by that time he's probably going to want more money, and that gives us the ability to just go ahead and sign him to another long-term contract. You saw the offer there for Richard Kaiser. Not sure that he'll be in the the opening day major league roster, but we'll see what happens. There's Dominic Billingsley, going to give him the $500K offer. He's probably going to be in the bullpen to start the year. William Blake, don't think he's going to be seeing major league action this season just because we've got too many good options in front of him. So we went with 250K there. Carvajal will boost up, so we just kind of keep him happy at the minor league level. Same for Choi. And now Matt Manning, this one's kind of interesting. I don't know that he'll be on the opening day rotation, but he's probably going to be there at some point this year. So we're going to get him up to 750K for the season. That should definitely keep him happy. Now here's Royce Lewis, the rookie that we traded for at the deadline. We can get him locked up for a couple more years. We're going to list him as depth because he's got Goodrum and Gonzalez ahead of him in terms of shortstop depth. So even though he's close to Major League ready, we're going to hopefully let him develop another year or so in the minors. Now Tim Meza, remember we needed to get him re-signed as well. He's actually up for arbitration, but he's 29 and has pitched pretty well for us the last couple seasons. So we're going to offer him a 3-year deal worth $8 million, and I think that will make him happy. And now what I kind of want to do is sort by age, see who is up for contract renewal, and just dump a bunch of guys. Luis Castilla is gone. He's 29 years old, D potential. He gone. Spencer Watkins is, how old is he? 29 as well, D potential. He's gone. There's going to be a bunch of guys exit the organization here. Cade Skivic, gone. Willie Santos, 28, C potential. That's probably not worth keeping around. Trent Skutsnik, or whatever it is, he's gone. So we got a lot of roster spots that are going to be freed up here. We've got 86 guys on the organization now. Sandy Baez can stay. Saucedo, D potential at 27 years old. No reason to keep him around. Same with Hideo Nomura. Daniel Panera, I believe, is a D potential. Yep, he's gone. Cam Gibson, D potential, 27-year-old, gone. And we can just fill out some of these spots with younger, either guys that are a little bit younger with the same skill set roughly, even if they're not going to develop. I just like to have the younger guys because they're usually not asking for nearly as much money. So that helps. We've got 79 roster spots open. A bunch of guys to re-sign, but now we're into the 26-year-old range where guys are usually reasonable in terms of their salary expectations, so we'll leave that go. Let's look at kind of what we have though in terms of any gaps in the roster. At starting pitcher, we're not going to have the best rotation in baseball by any means because we've got 3 guys that are probably going to be getting a lot of starts this year in Mize, Skubal, and Manning that aren't like studs, but I got to get them some innings at the major league level so that they can develop, and I see what I've got. So I don't think I'll make any additions there. In terms of relief pitching, I'm happy with what we have at the major league level. We're a little thin beyond that, but we do have several good options that are listed as closing pitchers that if we needed to call somebody up, we could certainly do so. So I think we're good there as well. Catcher, we've got Grullon and Rogers that should be the platoon options at the major league level, plus Castro down there, and we have 7 total, so I think we're good there. Bert Kohler is going to be our starting first baseman, but we only have 4 on the roster, so we might add one there. We got 5 second basemen. I'm kind of happy with what we have at that position. Maybe add some depth there. There's Noisy and Bote at third base. We've got some good options there. Shortstop, we're loaded. Left field, we've got a ton of options. I don't need to do anything there. There's Delevsky. And we're actually kind of a little bit light at center and right field in terms of major league everyday type talents. Delevsky is a guy that could really struggle, so we'll have to kind of see what happens in that spot. But let's take a look at what's out there on the free agent market, starting with catcher, because we might add an option if there's somebody there that's just kind of a middle-aged. I would like somebody left-handed perhaps in case Castro gets hurt and we need somebody called up to the major league level, but it's highly unlikely, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking there. First base, we just need some depth. Here you go, 18-year-old Bo Brown. He's a D potential, but I don't think we're going to find anything better than a 66 to just give us somebody who can play at the minor league level. That's all we really need out of him, so we'll give him a 1-year offer worth $80K. Second base, I don't really think we need anything here. Not a lot of real shiny names there available at the top. Chris Bryant is hitting the market. The longtime Cub hit 302, 25 homers, 85 driven in last year, but they're going to let him test free agency, and I'm sure he is not going to be back in a Cubs uniform as bad as they were last year. Let's see. I mean, they made the playoffs, but they were 82 and 80, I think. Ton of big names at shortstop with Lindor, Baez, Story, Carlos Correa, Miguel Rojas, who's won 2 Gold Gloves in a row, and I think has actually been hitting the ball pretty well. So that's interesting. We'll see where those guys land. Avisail Garcia is an interesting name. Somebody that I actually kind of like what he brings to the table. He's 30 years old. He's got good contact, decent power, decent vision and discipline. So, kind of a dependable major league player. Domingo Santana there is kind of interesting. He strikes out a lot, but he's got some pop. So let's see. Starling Marte. If this guy could hit lefties, man, would he be just absolutely phenomenal ball player, because he's pretty good defensively. He still runs pretty well, and he hits righties really well, which is interesting because he's a right-handed hitter. So DeShields is interesting, but I don't think he's a whole lot different than what we get out of Les Delevsky, so no reason to really look at him. Christian Yelich is hitting the market. This guy is a stud, obviously. He's 30 years old. You see his potential started to actually drop a little bit. So he might be on his way to a serious drop-off in ratings. But I'm liking the idea of maybe looking at Garcia. The Brewers, although, have already made him an offer at $36 million for 4 years. So we really might actually want to consider Santana as possibly an option. I like maybe what Santana could bring us because of his power. He's not great defensively, but he's better than Lawrence Walker. So he could be an option that we consider to bring him in and kind of, he's going to play a lot, but he might be in the outfield, he might be DHing. But bottom line, if this guy can come in and hit like 260 with 30 home runs for us, that would be fantastic. So he's wanting a 5-year deal. That's not going to happen because he's 29 years old. But, well, he's still kind of interested if we go in the 3-year range, around $10 million. So we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe let a few days go by and see if he's still available and still doesn't have any offers. Which will probably be the case. Usually if a guy is going to get offers, he's got one the moment you see the free agent list available. And like I said, with Walker as a good option in terms of his bat, but not necessarily great defensively, I think that gives us another weapon in the outfield that gives us some more pop. We'll probably lead off with Delevsky. Jankowski would be the odd man out in that scenario and probably see a lot of pine time. Christian Yelich going to the Phillies, a 6-year deal worth $118 million. Noah Syndergaard coming to Houston as the Astros are bolstering their rotation. That'll be interesting. Francisco Lindor is leaving the American League Central. Thank you. 7 years, $136.9 million going to the Reds. Roberto Perez also leaving the division. He's headed to the Angels. There's Chris Bryant signing with the Washington Nationals, a 9-year, $171.7 million deal. And now let's take a look at what is still out there. Javier Baez, still the biggest name on the market, 94 overall, and does not have a single offer. So those other shortstops ahead of him apparently got a lot of looks. That is interesting that he's still sitting there without an offer. If I did need a shortstop, that would be the one that I would be absolutely all over. So here's Santana. I think we can get him signed with a 3-year offer, club option. He's going to be an everyday player. Let's boost up the salary to just kind of try and make it a little bit more appealing to him. We'll see if he takes that. There's Javier Baez, and he's going to the stinking Twins, so now we're going to have to deal with him for a while. He signs a 6-year deal. Other note, we lost Jeimer Candelario to the Rule 5 draft, which is interesting that the Cardinals snatched him up. He's 28 years old, and they've got to plug him into the Major League roster, so interesting move there. As a result, we're going to try and sign this guy, Bobby Dalbec, 26-year-old, just a depth option. He's kind of just okay at most everything, but he's going to be in the minor leagues. We'll give him a contract that is good enough that if he needed to be called up for whatever reason, he's happy with his pay. We also added Freddie Snavely, a right-handed relief pitcher, 22 years old, see potential. Glad we found a guy like that. That just gives us some depth as in the relief scenario, and then we added a first baseman for some depth. There's Yoan Moncada. He is leaving our division, but in return, the White Sox are getting Jock Peterson and Alec Bohm, so the Phillies are active in free agency. We'll see how that pays off. Now, let's actually take a look at some spring training numbers as we now move forward. We did get Santana signed, obviously, as you can see here, and he shined in spring training. So what we actually ended up trying to do was get a lot of different guys some reps. Offensively, I was happy with what we got out of the team. Pitching, a different story, as you will see here in just a few moments. But starting things off with Santana at the top of the OPS list, Jankowski was very good in his 26 plate appearances or at bats. So interesting there because he was a guy that I thought was going to be sitting on the bench to start the year. Same with Jason Castro, but ultimately, regardless of how well he performed, I think he's going to start the year at AAA. Marwin Gonzalez was solid. Isaac Paredes was pretty good. But with Noisy and Bodie ahead of him, he's just kind of stuck in AAA. Harold Castro was solid. David Bodie was solid. Sheldon Noisy was solid. Richard Kaiser had a pretty good go of it in terms of his OPS, but a lot of that was walks and doubles. Nico Goodrum was pretty good. Royce Lewis was okay. Michael Brantley was down a little bit, 279 though, 2 homers. That's not terrible. Elvis Vizcaíno was okay. Kohler struggled a little bit, hitting 241, so keep an eye on that. Les Delevsky, this of course would happen. A guy that I want to see shine has a 188 batting average. Now his on base percentage was 300, so that's way up. When he gets the average up, he'll be fine. So not too worried. And then you see Stewart, Dixon, Rogers, Walker, Guerrillon struggled. Freddie Avalos struggled, and then Cameron and Lugo didn't get a ton of at-bats. Grayson Griner, not a single at-bat during spring training, but not real concerned with that. Now, pitching. This is just ugly. Up and down this list, a lot of ugly numbers, starting with William Blake, 2.72 whip and an 18 ERA over 10 innings. Some of the results on this list were that I started some guys, giving them some innings. They weren't very good, so I gave some other guys some chances. They didn't do very good, and then nobody got enough innings to kind of get these numbers back under control. But bottom line, there are some really, really pathetic looking whips and ERAs on this list. So it makes it kind of hard to decide who to put on the starting day, the opening day rotation. But in any case, you see some of the numbers as we kind of move our way down here. There's Matt Manning. The whip was up because he's walking a ton of guys. But if he gets that under control, I think he'll be okay. Pretty much the same story for Jordan Balazovic. And then it's Tarek Skubal. Too many walks for him as well, but those numbers aren't too much of a concern. Casey Mize was pretty much as advertised. Joe Jimenez, not sure how you have an ERA over 7 with the rest of those numbers. It doesn't necessarily add up, but in any case, not the kind of spring he wanted. Carvajal was really good. Matthew Boyd, the ERA is inflated, but former Cy Young winner now. Not too worried about him. And then Hicks, Meza, and Vizcaíno all put together really good springs. So at least we got some bright spots, although not that many to be quite frank. So before we wrap up, what I wanted to do was give a look at the opening day rotation and some lineups. Matthew Boyd, the Cy Young winner, is going to get the ball on opening day. Jordan Balazovic is going to be the number 2 starter, and then we're going to just go ahead and throw these guys into the fire. It is going to be Mize, Skubal, and Manning rounding out this rotation. So, honestly, Chang and Norris pitched well enough to kind of deserve the spots in terms of what they did last year. But everybody was so bad in spring training that it just made it, kind of a free-for-all. And I'm going to go with my gut and say this might not be our best season coming up, but we are building for the future now. And these guys are going to need to figure it out, how they can pitch at the major league level. We've got 2 guys at the top of the rotation that should be pretty solid. Mize pitched pretty well last year, but Skubal and Manning are going to be interesting. I need to get about 10 wins apiece out of those guys if we're going to be competitive. We've got Chang and Norris there as long relievers, as well as good options to throw into the rotation if we need to make some changes. And then Jimenez, Billingsley, Meza, Vizcaino, Jordan Hicks. I'm really happy with what we have coming out of the bullpen, but it's just going to be a question of what we get from our starting rotation, particularly those 3 young guys that are now in the major league rotation. So, in terms of our batting lineups, we are going to give the start to Les Delevsky in center field. We'll see how he does, but Travis Jankowski there as an option if it's a real struggle. Then it's Walker, Brantley, Kohler at first. Santana and Walker will probably split some time between DH and right field, but Santana's going to bat 5th. Marwin Gonzalez at short. David Bodie at third. Will probably, use Noisy in that role a lot as well. And then Jake Rogers and Nico Goodrum. On the bench, Noisy could, he could play second. He could play short or third. Same with Castro. Castro might spend some time in the outfield as well. Grion is going to be the catcher against lefties. Vizcaino, another infielder. I mean, we've got some good options coming off the bench. There's no question about that. And then finally, it's the lineup against left-handed pitching, which is going to be Goodrum at short, Vizcaino at second, Walker in left field, Santana in right field, Kohler doing the DHing, Noisy at third, Marwin Gonzalez at first base, David Grion catching, and Les Delevsky batting ninth, playing center field. That'll leave Bodie, Brantley, Castro, Jankowski, and Rogers on the bench. Guys, that is going to do it for this episode. We will have opening day in the next one, so drop a like, subscribe, comment below, and be sure to see the next episode where we have opening day of the 2022 campaign. See y'all next time.